It's why you sign the big players, isn't it? It's why you sign the Mbappes to take the big moments, which he scored a lot of goals in the Liga, but has he really grasped the big moments in the big games? I think there's a big question mark about that. Again, a couple of chances in this game yesterday, didn't do particularly well. I mean, Vinicius, the whole front line, I mean the whole team, but I'm picking out a superstar here.
Yes.
It's why you sign them, to make the difference. Second leg, the only question I have about the second leg is, no, I'm being serious.
He was going on about it today as well when he came in. He was scratching his head again.
But listen.
Struggling with this.
The only question I have about the second leg is if they do something special in the first 10 or 15 minutes and they get the crowd roaring behind them and they get that momentum and they take the lead and before you know it, they're only needing 2 goals and they've got that confidence and that momentum. Can they keep a clean sheet at the other end? That is a humongous question. I don't know. I just don't know. Right? Is Declan Rice likely to score 2 free kicks like that? No. So there are some pictures you can paint as to how it could be a little bit more of a difficult night for Arsenal. Not necessarily going out. Obviously, they're clear favourites. I'm just saying, if a big early start happens for Manchester City, for Real Madrid, and the Bernabeu crowd get behind them, it might be a slightly more interesting evening than a lot of people think. If they don't get off to that start, and Arsenal can sort of quash that, then there's no way back for them. So they need to find something special, clearly. And that's why you have the big superstars, and that's why you pay the big money, and that's why you sign the Kylian Mbappes. Let's see what happens.
You just mentioned Kylian Mbappe, the big superstar. Here's what I know. He left PSG. PSG is a better team. He came to Real Madrid, and they're a worse team than they were when he wasn't there. Now, is that a coincidence? Wow. I do not know, but that's the way it's played out. There are more issues to Real Madrid than the presence or absence of Kylian Mbappe, and I recognize that. But I can tell you, PSG is a better team. They look like a team. They look like they know what they're doing together, whereas Real Madrid, you cannot say the same thing. And one of the common denominators is Kylian Mbappe is not a PSG, he's now a Real Madrid. It's unfair maybe to say that, but the truth of the matter is he's the superstar and he has changed the dynamics at Real Madrid.
Ali blaming the French, Frank.
That's very nuts. It's not nice. You know what I think, Dan? You know what? Ali is absolutely right. The thing is, it's very hard to play with a superstar unless the superstar does the difference. You know, when Ronaldo was playing for Real Madrid, he wasn't defending, he wasn't running back. But every time he had the ball, he was doing something different. Messi at Barcelona never defended. But when he had the ball, he was doing something different and he was scoring goals, and they both were scoring goals. Yesterday, Mbappe, we could have said anything. If on the one chance he had, he would have scored. It would have been 1-0 for Real Madrid. We would have a different explanations about his behavior and the way that he expressed himself on the field. Same thing for Vinicius Junior. He's always the same prime. It's what we were talking about superstar at Paris Saint-Germain before with Messi, Neymar and Mbappe. If they don't make a difference, they're going to be criticized because we cut the team in half and therefore it's not a team anymore. This season, we have a team in Paris Saint-Germain because everybody does the job, and on top of it, they score goals when they need that. I saw Ousmane Dembélé running back, getting the ball back. That's the difference. But again, it's hard to play with a superstar, especially when they play at front, because we all know they're not going to run back like Mbappe, like Vinicius Junior nowadays. But if they don't score on top of it, they're going to be criticized big time, like Ali just did.
Yeah, well, he had a conundrum. He had several conundrums, Ancelotti, because of the injuries and suspensions. And we discussed it yesterday a little bit. One of them was Fede Valverde, who he eventually put to right back, which he's done before this season. But you cannot take, and I think he'll be understanding that now, you cannot take his energy, his drive, his legs, his dynamism. He's arguably the most dynamic, quickest box-to-box midfielder that plays the game. He can run like nobody's business, and he's a great striker of the ball, and he can score goals. But you can't take that work rate, energy and legs out of the middle of the park when you have Luka Modric in there. And you've only got Luka Modric and Camavinga. and Arsenal have 3. We touched on this yesterday. You need the extra body in there, and you need somebody that can do the running of a player that can't do it anymore. And Luka Modric. Because you've got Bellingham and Rodrigo who are dealing with the wide guys. I talked about it yesterday. They try to tuck in to help the midfield, but then you've got Saka and Martinelli running at the fullback, so they have a job to do in that scenario. And taking Fede Valverde out of that midfield, and I know he was hamstrung by who he had available, really left him exposed, and I mean really, in the middle of the park, where Arsenal, you could argue, is one of their strongest areas. Declan Rice, Thomas Partey, Martin Odegaard. And if you don't have a semblance of control in the middle, you're going to struggle. And that was a big part of the issue for Ancelotti. Again, he didn't have the biggest squad to pick from, so he did have these conundrums to deal with. But quite frankly, he got it wrong.
Ian, your thoughts?
Well, I've covered Real Madrid a lot this season, and we discussed it in the build of this game. They've been a shambles in a few games. They were, in that game, the 4-4 draw with Real Sociedad in the Copa del Rey. And there's a little bit of a feeling, I was thinking today, if you keep on walking along the edge of the cliff, pretty soon you're going to fall down into the rocks. And I think that's what happened to them last night. It was a pretty dreadful performance, really. Okay, I think one thing we need to add here, we've been talking a lot about Real Madrid. Arsenal were fantastic on the night. It was a great performance, I thought, one of the best in the Gunners' history. But going back to Real, yeah, Craig's right. I could see a scenario where they're on fire, Mbappe and Rodrigo and Vinicius and Bellingham, and they go 2 goals up in half an hour. Then you've got a completely different dynamic going on. But I'm a geeky commentator, so I'll give you a couple of stats. Arsenal conceded 3 goals in any match that they've played this season, and Real Madrid have conceded a goal in 12 of their last 13 home games. So Arsenal could nick one, and then Real Madrid are going to need 5.
And then, even if they go through, you've got to then face PSG, and then goodness knows in the final as well. Alex?
Oh, negative.
I'm just saying, and I'm leading into a very negative question now.
Here we go.
Is Ancelotti a dead man walking yet?
Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. It will be defined, as always, by the trophies or lack of trophies, and major trophies they have to be at the end of the season. So let's see if they are indeed knocked out of the Champions League at this stage. That will be viewed as not being good enough. In the Champions League, Real Madrid have to make the semi-finals minimum. A quarter-final exit is not good enough for the Kings of Europe. Let's see what happens in the Copa del Rey final. But like I say, winning the Copa del Rey on its own isn't enough, wouldn't be enough to save Ancelotti's job. And let's see what happens in La Liga, where they're second, trailing Barcelona, still a Clásico to come in the league in May. So as always, his future will be defined by the trophies. But I mean, the performance last night does him no favours. Ancelotti talked before the game in the presser. He was asked about, confidence in him, and he said the man who really counts, i.e., Florentino Perez, hasn't got tired of me yet. Well, Florentino Perez doesn't have patience for performances and results like last night, so that might start to change.
Alex, thank you. You were at the game, Alex, for us. I hope you were very objective, given your Arsenal ways.
I felt like I was dreaming, honestly, Dan. It felt like a dream. In fact, I still think it might have been.
Oh, dear, that's not a curry any favour with any Real Madrid fan. Dear me.
Where's the objectivity?
Alex, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Just a reminder.
Arsenal are in dreamland as they lead Real Madrid by 3 goals ahead of the return leg. The Emirates Stadium erupted as Declan Rice ripped a pair of free kicks into the net. Mikel Merino made the night sweeter with a 3rd strike before Eduardo Camavinga kicked the ball in anger and earned an injury-time red card. It was a night to forget for Los Blancos, but a fairy tale for the Gunners. The Gunners go to the Santiago Bernabeu with the grace of a comfy lead. But there is always room to improve. In the first minute, Jakub Kiwior kicked the air, and Kylian Mbappe made the first inroad on the Arsenal goal. The French forward leaped into action to steal a loose pass from the central defender, and he failed to convert a big chance around the half-hour after a through ball from Jude Bellingham. At this stage of the Champions League, especially against a side with the talent that Madrid have, chances are almost inevitable. But the hosts were at fault for giving them most of these openings in the first half-hour. The team cannot afford to be tentative if they want to make the next step in Europe. Some of that may be because the manager has put the handbrake on the team more actively this year. While Ben White was so close to doubling the lead against Bayern Munich in the quarter-final first leg last campaign, Jurrien Timber was mostly worried about keeping tabs on Vinicius Jr. There was enough to see in the first half to suggest fans might have finished the 90 minutes in frustration. The players have to loosen up, bring their best to the pitch, and deliver in big moments. Arteta has built a blueprint to be respected, but he had to rely on individual ability to take the team over the line. It was a race against time to try and bring Bukayo Saka into the squad after his hamstring surgery. Without 90 minutes on the field ahead of the first leg, he was at risk of looking rusty against one of the best outfits in the world. However, that was a gamble worth taking to take the team forwards. As the game slowed down and gained pace again in the latter stages of the first half, he was the man who threatened to open the lock. 2 weak-footed deliveries, the second of which was thanks to his clever movement as an option behind the back four, should have seen a red and white shirt connect. Madrid made their respect clear to the winger as time went on. Bellingham blocked off the access to his running teammate between the lines, and David Alaba was hot on his heels. But after the break, his ability to hold onto the ball and buy fouls earned the free kicks that made the breakthrough. Saka shared the pitch with Vinicius, Mbappe, Rodrigo, and Bellingham. But it would be fair to say that he turned out to be the most decisive player out of all for forwards in this contest. It is a demonstration of the standard Saka sets, and as he left the field for Leandro Trossard after the second goal, fans will pray that the knock that forced him off will not curtail his quality again. Another Hale End Academy graduate gained his plaudits for his part in this triumphant evening. Miles Lewis Skelly is still 18, playing in a position that was not natural in his development. But the left-back brims with belief in his game, and he was one of the players to set the tone for the team. On the same side of the field as Mbappe, who is a little lax in his work without the ball, Lewis Skelly had the space to try and break through the lines of Madrid's block. But space does not kill opponents, players do. The powerful physique, punchy passing, and bravery of the teenager to take the game to his opponents did the damage as Martinelli, Rice, and Marino all benefited from his invention. These traits are not new to Lewis Skelly. What is more outstanding is his unflappable confidence. In a phase when Real reminded their hosts that a moment of hesitation was all that they needed to unleash their feared front four, he continued to carry himself as if he were a player with his mates in the park.